inspired by is, definitely, you know, sometimes intimidating because their pictures are real things, and we're not photocopiers, and we're not supposed to just, think that we can get exactly like a picture, but we can definitely try and steal different elements in there. And these flowers are now looking pretty dead now, so I have to show you a photocopy of them. So, there's, it's a little bit like a holiday, festive, Christmas kind of bouquet, right? So it still has our roses in there, and it's got the mums in there. And then over here on the side, you can't really see on this one. I cropped it too much. Maybe you can't really see the carnation. And I can't remember the fancy name of some sort of lily, small lily. These are a lot smaller, but they definitely have the same kind of stamens in the middle of them. And the kind of mum is that, or is daisy, Gerber daisy, Gerber daisy,
Gerbera daisy.
Gerber daisy, like the
Gerbera.
Gerbera,
Yeah.
like the baby food Gerbera.
Yes.
Anyways, yeah, so definitely a little bit more fancier daisy going on in there. But what I really liked about it too, it screamed right away composition. This is a big fancy word that some artists use, about how to display all the arrangements and stuff like that. And, definitely with the floral, they ship me the flowers, right? So they already picked out which ones would look really nice together and focal points and stuff like that, which is really cool because they got 3 different red flowers here in this shot, and there are 3 totally different flowers. But if you look at them, and when they were real, they were still all very similar in tone. Okay, so really, really brilliant red. So I tried to photocopy this on dust so that you guys can really see the brilliance of it. But there's almost like maybe on the camera it might look a little bit more pinky tone, or on the photocopy might be a little bit more on the orangier tones. Definitely you could choose which one you like the better, and then definitely tweak it and play around with the tone of the red, depending on what you have. But definitely it's the placement of, and again, strong, bold white, and then you got your green filler. So yeah, it's just all about placing it. And then I was trying to move myself around the table, trying to take pictures of it. And this was a nice shot because I saw a little bit more of the top of my rose, where here you only see a peek of it at the back behind. I could have shortened the stick here, I guess. Because like I said, this is a picture of a vase of my own, like somebody gave them to me. So this is my picture, right? So I could have played around with that a little bit more, and again, we can always play around with that a little bit more and move it down. We are the artists. We have the license to change things and try and interpretate what we feel like out of this, right? So we've got a nice bouquet here. We can definitely do the whole vase shot if we wanted to, or we can do like a real big top view of like an oversized style. There's so many styles, like when you start cropping these pictures. And then, but mostly I wanted to give you guys really good shots of what these flowers look like dead on, right? So when we choose to put our design together, at least we have some really good pictures to go by, right? But remember the angle, if you're flipping this over on the side and you're only seeing maybe, the side view of it, it's gonna look a little bit different, right? So definitely dead on. There's a lot of little details in there we don't need to do. But definitely having a little bit more of a curlier back flipping and doing all that and trying to fill in our 5 or 6 petal flower, is going to definitely look like these carnations. I've done a couple of different styles of carnations on another 5 flower series, if you guys want to jump on that. So it's very, very similar to that, especially on more of a side view. And then you get to see a little bit tiny peek of the bottom of the base of the flower on this view, right? So again, depending on which view you want to do these flowers, right, you're not going to see that base. All right, this is a nice shot too, just with the 2, but with our composition and what we're taught even with through Donna, like it's all like little triangles. So you definitely would maybe want to stick something else red in there as well, you know, depending on which one you want to try. Again, if you want to just focus on 3 flowers, this is another wonderful shot. You don't even have to put the rose in there. You can definitely move this little acorn down with your greenery, and we can just focus on this Gerber daisy and the mums and these lilies on the side, and then you're still getting like a triangle kind of feature, but they are going to be 3 different flowers. You've got the 3 triangles right there. Right. So yeah, just trying to share a little bit more about designing with you guys and how to figure out colors and how to put the design together from something that maybe you're inspired by from your garden, or maybe you got some flowers and for Mother's Day or special occasion, and then you know, you're inspired to try and paint it. Then hopefully you won't be so intimidated to try it. Right? So we definitely did do a lot of roses lately and a lot of the different programs. And we definitely played around with our daisies, but, you know, again, color combinations were different a little bit. And then if you look at the strokes between the daisy and these mums, they're very, very, very similar. But definitely these are very, very skinny. And then these ones definitely have a little bit more punch to them, a little bit fatter, chubbier. And then again, if you count these, like, I mean, there's a million of them. So we don't have to put, you know, stroke for stroke, every single little tiny one. And when you're dealing with white, it's so hard to get that shading in there so subtle. So definitely, you know, we're not going to be photocopiers, right? And then this view, you got to see the little bit of the center, how it comes all in the center on this dot here, which I really like too. And you can just see the hint of that little tiny bit of goldy yellow white coming through, right? So you can see where it hollows down. And then the rest of those are all squished up because you got it all in a nice arrangement. And so they're sitting practically right on top of each other everywhere, right? So I kind of like this blurred version too, of just having that little bit of a subtle view of the vase. Okay, so blurred out. That definitely intrigued me too from this shot here as well. So, you know, kind of visualize that you're looking right down on a big flower arrangement as opposed to doing it straight on. And, you know, so I'm trying to make things easy too, right? But I'm really liking how it looks over here. You see a little bit more of my chest where I have some storage stuff in there. You're seeing a little bit of the brown there, dark brown, black. And then it also complements with that kind of teal, aqua kind of white that's going on here too. So I'm really liking the way that those shades are popping off against the way these colors are, even though it's just my table I happen to put it on. But definitely it does work with complementing the bouquet. So I think we're going to play around with like a true brown or a burnt umber, and definitely like an aqua and some white. And if you have maybe an ocean view or something else that's really, really pale, you can always use something like that. And then we're going to slowly do a transition from like a really dark in the back corner, and then slowly come off into this light beige color. And then that way, we're only going to have maybe a little bit dark, but 3/4 of our canvas should be nice and light. So then that way we shouldn't have to fight too much to be able to get all our colors on and get this done, you know, in a reasonable amount of time. I'm hoping this is not going to be another one of those 2-3 day inspired by projects. A lot of the strokes hopefully are already covered in a lot of my intro programs, guys. So I know most of you guys that are my VIPs are with me, definitely have them all under your belt. But you guys are catching the recording at some point. Definitely if you're feeling like you need a little bit more practice, please go check out my full program. I have 12 courses there, guys. That will definitely go revisit. Maybe you need to revisit some of them if you're struggling in your way. So I figured we would start off getting these backgrounds done. And then we could play around on paper to figure out what colors and what brushes we're going to use to do these strokes. All right, so like I said, I'm guessing that we're going to use a lot more of the white and teal. Definitely a lot more white. And then we can fade it out and do just like a soft, simple background, because this is going to take over most of the whole canvas. All right, so we're going to dampen our sponge. Dampen both sides, the whole thing really good. And then if we need the other side, we have it. And generally, it's always safer to start with your lighter colors and then keep adding darker colors. So the blue and the brown might give an interesting tone together too. So definitely we're going to concentrate on trying to get the bottom half of it done and then work up into the darker areas so that we can continually take put more darker and darker colors on there. Okay. So we're definitely going to load up with I'm going to flip my canvas upside down for what I want it to look after, right? So we're going to start upside down. So it's easier to work down towards you. And then when we're done, we want that dark to be up at the top. So we're going to definitely put a good, 2/3 of that white and then just a little bit of the teal. Work that in a little bit. And I'm just working on canvas paper tonight, guys. This is like a practice session even for me, right? So I've learned that these canvas papers actually look really nice in a canvas too. So definitely consider doing it on something that's a little closer to a canvas than just cardstock, because cardstock definitely has its challenges too. And this is definitely better than cardstock. It's definitely more like a real canvas, but it definitely has some paper qualities in there too. So if you put too much moisture, which is the last thing I usually do, I usually go for that floating medium last if I need it. Generally, I just try to keep putting more paint on that just slightly damp sponge and to get me started. And this size canvas too, guys. If you're doing a 16 by 20, then definitely, you sometimes need to help it with a little bit of floating medium. But definitely just a nice soft padding, powdery kind of look here down at the corners. And good coverage. It's covering the overflow. I always have a little bit of remnants of my last design. I'll probably have some of this teal on the next page. But, this paint covers really good, so I'm not worried about it. Let it dry. So that's all I'm doing is trying to get that teal right at the very bottom. Lighten that teal up just a little tiny bit so it's not too dark. And then definitely now we're starting to push more on that white side of that sponge, trying to get a lot more white in there. And there's hardly any paint left in my sponge now with the teal. Safe to kind of move up a little bit. Get around that ridge. Okay, so mostly I'm concentrating on picking up white. So this is going to be now this dirty white. Try not to pick up any more teal, just white. Just enough to cover that canvas now. I have a light dirty sponge. I'm slightly going on at a bit of an angle. I definitely want more teal, just slightly trickling off. And then I'm going to just have a little bit of brown and definitely trickling over into the corner a little heavier. See, we used up pretty much all that white. And definitely we don't even have to worry too much about too much coverage, just where it blends out around the side. Because like I said, we're probably going to cover a lot of that with greenery and then we can flip our canvas the other way around now. Back to the top. And then we're going to add a little bit of that brown with some fresh white. Start adding that darkness here. I definitely want to have that white kind of transition softly into brown now. Okay, so mine's a little bit muddy on me right now. It's not very dark. That's okay. I just want to kind of keep playing around with this white and finish down a little bit more closer to the edge before I start adding that soft brown. You might even have little trickles of blue coming through, and that's okay. So you just want it to be really soft transition. And then we can always get things darker. The hard part is if you get too dark, then sometimes it gets a little harder doing that. I'm going to put this white over here with the brown. And maybe a little bit over here just in case. You always have your darker color on the top and your lighter color at the bottom. And then that way you can play around with adding a little bit of lighter colors when you want it. But this was just like a soft transition back in here. Right. Just try to get it nice and powdery. If you are having dryness issues, then definitely just the smallest amount of floating medium. Get the dirtiness in there a little bit and soften that white. Smoky kind of look over here. Or now concentrating on trying to pick up a little bit of that brown. Right, and I'm doing a little bit more of a tapping motion to try to set that paint down. And I want it to come in into that little bit of that smoky area. But just gently so that you have a nice transition. It doesn't go from totally dark to totally light. And then we can always add more shading in there too after it dries. Definitely complement that color a little bit more. And just basically white on the sides. And if you're doing a wrap canvas, basically, try to copy your color all the way around the edges. Make in that little darker color. But remember the tone, the value of darkness that you got going on here. Like, try not to go, any darker than that mid kind of color. Right? We don't want to go too dark. It's like a blurred background, right? We don't want it to be for like nighttime. It's the tone difference. Down a little bit in different random places. It's not just straight across. pushing that white into the color around the edges to soften it. Very similar how we do like our clouds. I'm starting to get some dryness now. That it's getting tacky. Area I need just that little bit of floating medium. Giving me that freckled look. Kind of like in the tone of that, with that little bit, tiny bit of teal in that brown, kind of just changed the whole tone from the dirty sponge. Alright, it doesn't have to be rocket science. Right. All right, just something a little bit interesting and different and different colors. Okay, so we're gonna let this dry and then we're gonna bring out our chalk and then we're gonna start playing around with placement and trying to imagine where we're gonna put everything. The main three reds and a newer one that not very many people use, the cardinal red is definitely very rich and dark, right? But if we want to use something that's going to have that a little bit more shadow and extreme, it's almost a little bit too dark. So definitely I want to try and fight with this apple red a little bit more. And then what I found playing around with the magenta and the apple red gives you a really brilliant red and the magenta gives you just a little bit more coverage. And then definitely having the berry wine is going to be our shading color for the main parts of the red areas. And then we're going to use some citrus, green, and sap and thicket, sort of normal greens. And then you can even play around. There's some really bright areas in there if you wanted to pop in some different slider leaves or the different kind of ferny kind of things there that are there. We can maybe try and come up with something a little bit different color green with something like that. And then the white, definitely dominantly a lot of white, a lot of citrus. And then we could play around with the coffee latte and burnt umber to create our acorn. Okay, so I'm going to create a little sheet here, play around with you a little bit that I can add to the PDF and play a few strokes. So hopefully this is going to be dry enough. I'm just going to pop this out quick, okay? And I'll come back to the plate so that we don't get ourselves in trouble. Oh, some apple red and some magenta. And those you can almost put right beside each other, guys. And I like playing around with them separately, individually. Sometimes they're going to be a little bit more pinky. Sometimes they're going to be a little bit more red. And then changing that all up a little bit more too is going to help make it look a little bit more unique for each flower. Okay. So depending on how big you do it, definitely I suggest like 16 to play around with. And probably a 12 and 3/4 if you want to. Wondering what's going on with our brush. I think I just left too much soap in it. Erased it a little bit more. Washed it too quickly. Okay, so definitely dominantly the apple red and berry wine, and definitely different flowers. We're going to change the gradients up. So you can definitely play just with the apple red and 3/4 of the berry wine, and you're still going to get really good coverage because you're only tipping with the apple red. Right? So that gives us a lot more success when you're looking at a little deeper, darker color petals. And definitely adding that pink in there makes it more like a hot cherry red. And hopefully you guys will be able to see better in the printout. And then also playing around with the more of the apple red and the yellows together. You don't want to highlight with white because you'll end up with pink. So sometimes we'll sneak in just that little tiny bit of yellow just to pop up some brightness, to give it like that corally kind of red look. And it definitely is going to be, we're not really tipping, we're just brightening that gradient up so we can get a little bit orangey red. Okay, so depending on where we are building on our flower, we're definitely going to have to slowly try to come up a little lighter, a little higher, a little lighter. Right, to an orange tone, the very lightest. Right, so play around with all your gradients. Right. Orangey, hopefully. And then we can always let things dry and then try to highlight things a little bit more too. But it's definitely adding extra shading in there as well with even sap or thicket. I want to try and do a little bit more of a darker gradient with these reds. Then just sneaking in that little bit of green at the back is going to give you a little bit deeper shadow back here too. Okay, so this is a little bit more red and then less berry wine with even a darker color. Okay, so those are going to be the different ways that we're going to try and change the tone and the petals a little bit, you know, so that they're very similar, but they're a little bit different. And then definitely some are going to be easier to do than others. For daisy strokes, you know, you definitely want to have a lot more light on your brush than dark. And we need some floating medium in there so we can squish our brush and get a nice thin chisel, especially on the paper. And again, trying to get a little bit more fatter one. And then push down a little bit more and then pop right up on that chisel. Okay, for those Gerber daisies. And then we want to have that nice bright red through it with some shadow in there. Okay, and I'm really practicing on flipping that over. Some of them are going to get smaller and smaller as you get into the very center of it. where you're really going to only do little tiny chisels, right? Or you can downsize your brush. And just highlight anything that you're going on top of each other, right? You want to kind of stand on top of each other. See, some of these petals are really crissing all over the place as they come around into the center. Nice. You see how nice and bright that one popped up on top of the dark. So it's giving you that very subtle highlight there. Does it stand up on that other petal in the back? Right. So I'm just kind of giving you guys something to play with here, like illusion of layering some of these smaller ones in the around the center. Definitely we could pull out a round brush to do this one, and make the smallest one, number 8. And then you can even use your strip liner if you want to do a smaller one. A little floating medium. So you're still going to get those little tiny daisy strokes, especially in the very, very center. So you might want to do a little bit more flip-flopping. Right, these tiny little centers. Right, so you're making them all a little bit random. Try to do a little bit more of a point and then punch down. Dragging slightly. Pulling some longer ones. Just a little tiny bit of yellow, just to say that there's something there to highlight some of these ones. Especially when we're doing like multiple rounds on them, we're definitely going to have to highlight them a little bit. But I noticed that we're right now with the wet on wet, it's gonna streak some of that dark red from it behind there too. And hopefully it's not gonna go too yellow. Like this one here is definitely a little bit too yellow. Right, so we don't want too much of that yellow to pop out. So you have to keep adding fresh dark colors to your brush, and then the smallest little tip of yellow, so that you're just getting that tiny little bit of a peak of a brightness there. That's basically the challenge with the reds that we're going to be playing with all of them. Like even definitely with our rose, with our smooth. I better wake this brush up a little bit. Lighten it up, brighten it up just a little bit with yellow. And these are just smooth strokes, guys. You're not doing any wiggles. Okay. Play with your strokes. Go in both directions. This is definitely, I'm playing around looking at this here, trying to figure out how we can maybe do this rose. Right, so there's definitely 2 back petals there. Right, and then there is one that comes around the front. Right, then we have another one, a skirt. Again, we have to start adding just a little bit more yellow. Right, that back skirt. And if anything, we're going to have to maybe add a tiny little bit more shading in there to help it at the end too. And there's another little skirt over here at the side. Roses, we have to try and copy this one, right? I'm trying to add those little extra interest, right? Especially with your starter stroke, it's going to really help separate. Just a small one on top. Yeah, that's probably enough. And then we can curl in just a little bit of a center in there. Definitely, we might have to steal a little bit of yellow. Just a very smidgen yellow. Right. Just a little tiny bit. Smooth it back out again if you have to. And you put it in there and try to take it away. And we're putting the front skirt in there. And then there is your little side dolphin stroke in there. Right, there's two humps. Ew. Kind of flips out a little bit. But too many details, then definitely it's going to be a lot harder. Okay. And then we can float that petal right in front. Close. Okay, so this little closer in front. Then we want to add a little bit more of a closer on the side here. So we're going to close that down and layer that right on top of that rose. Okay, so that's that back one. And we don't have to go too much because we still have to do the scoop one here too. Okay, so petal by petal, trying to figure it out. So this is definitely our dolphin nose. All right, so you can stop right there if you want. Just do your simple little dolphin nose. And then this back petal comes here. Did we do that one? Yeah, I guess we did. We didn't bring it up maybe a little bit further up higher. So we can bring in another little dolphin nose. Maybe in there. Like curl around that cup a little bit more. I'll try to add to that petal to make it a little bit wider. That's what it needed. Just the same gradient. Just make it look like one big petal over there, guys. If you need to shorten it. Okay, so that's this one here. So now we're going to come over and straighten it out and add that little closer again underneath. Sneak in that yellow. Soften it back out again. All right, and try to stay a little bit farther away now, guys, right? Give yourself a little bit more room. Okay. And then here is a really interesting little flip that I've been wanting to do. And I'm just sitting there one day looking at this picture again. I'm like, well, there's something we have to do a little different for this petal. We're actually going to flip our brush around and we're going to, you're not going to see the top part of this petal right now because all I want to do is encourage that nice bottom of the bell of the flower. So we're going to actually put the highlight, the lighter color of the red, down at the bottom of this rose. Okay, and we can pull that in. So this should just blend right into each other. Okay, so we're just going to add this little extra little shape here. We'll stop you. Over here. Right, coming in. Stop shape. And disappear. then this is where we have to add, right where this back petal is starting to over to the side. Hopefully you still have that little bit of a connection that we can steal from over here. We're going to flip down and out. Okay, so I actually made that pretty big. Make that a little less flippy. Okay, so you see how not a big deal. I just kind of darken that back out again. And then that's how I'm going to go a little bit softer. We're just kind of putting that little flip in there. So hopefully we have enough dark going on behind here too as well, because this is where the depth is really important. So this is where we might have to sneak in that little bit more thicket into the berry wine. So then that way we have a little bit more separation for our rows to flip over. We definitely want that to stand out a little bit more. And then this is going to definitely have the other closer on top of it. Trying real hard not to make this yellow. So yeah, we might have to play around with this one a little bit if you want. And then definitely this is another one of those petals that are flipping out. Right, but with our one stroke world, we have to decide sometimes what we want to do with those. Right, so we're just going to join that into the end, put some pressure, and then we can flip that over. It looks like it's coming in. This is inspired by. We can try and do things together, right? But we're definitely darker over here, under here. Flip these around any way we want. Right, but we're gonna definitely have a stem in there, right? So there's only gonna be a lot of greenery. It saves the day. Right? So we're definitely gonna be adding some more slider leaves in there, and some maybe calyx in there that can wrap around. There's one that looks like it comes up right underneath the bud a little bit. We can definitely add a lot more greenery. I'm just playing with a dirty brush, guys, right now. Picking up a little bit of yellow and green, and there's a little hint of whatever red in there. And then you put it right on the top of a little daisy stroke. It was really flipped over. Accident. Isn't that cool? I'm inspired by today. I don't know. Like I said, I was just trying to play around with a different type of bud. But this one is not easy, guys. It's definitely not easy, and it's definitely more flat, more straight across flat. So hopefully you guys can do it. But definitely it looks nice there like that. And that's not going to be all we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing, some more greenery around the sides. Maybe that kind of chisel to make these little greenery things here. Maybe we can do some kind of. Now let's see. We've got to get an old brush out for this, guys. Okay, so we have our main stem of that fern, and then we're gonna just make more stems, and then we can just kind of do like a little pouncy kind of look, maybe with them, like almost like a tree coming in. It kind of looks like them. You know that filler I'm talking about. Right, so just like a tap tap, tap tap, but it's a little bit fuzzy because this brush is used a little bit. But yeah, definitely we don't want to be beating up our good brushes. So grab an old brush when we go to do this later. And it's got something like the little filler that they put in there, like the fern kind of style. Right. And then, yeah, these petals, they look pretty interesting too with the pink and green. And so, yeah, we're definitely going to piece that one together a little bit more. I think that one is going to be something that I'll just do with you guys on the canvas just because I already have a plan what I'm going to do and try and play around with these colors. But it's going to be best for me just to show you on the canvas. And then our daisy strokes, I said the real white ones. See all this white back over here. You can tell I'm not carrying how much white's on my brush right now. Definitely play around with maybe some citrus green. Just a slight amount of it. Okay, so dominantly we're going to have lots of white and just enough to have a little bit of a something dirty down there. Right, and then really small little chisels. Okay, so it's almost got some green on it. We definitely want to have it nice and bright. Okay, so practice small thicker ones, but generally they're going to be a lot more curling ones, curling towards the center. And practice layering. So we'll show you all that on the canvas. And so I just wanted to give us a little bit of a warm up and then talk about the colors I think that we need to play around with. So there's just a tiny little bit of yellow here that's showing, but I think we definitely have to add a little bit more white into there so it's not so yellow. And then definitely those slider leaves, you know, we can make them a lot brighter green, even with some lime. What do you think? How you guys doing with your rosebud? Gotta unmute.
Practicing.
Keep practicing. Yeah. But something that you can have that picture right beside you when you're playing around and then try to dissect it because like we've played around enough with roses now that we can almost figure it out. And but I haven't, you know, done too much of this, but definitely we're gonna see once it dries, right? You can add a little bit more tweaking of shading in there by layering a little bit more thicket because you can see those dark hollows. Right? So we need to get definitely a little bit darker in spots. And that comes with the extra shading that we can pop in after. Because there's only so much you can do with still getting that brilliant red and not have it take over on you and then get too dark on you. Right? So hopefully this will really help you guys with any of your red problems, especially even with poppies. Because we like to make those dark red poppies, but really hard to get everything to stand out. So that's my interpretation of that one anyway. Definitely, again, if you do that view is really tipped over on its side, like a lot of our little bugs that we're doing already. And again, depending on how much you squish it in there, we can put more flowers on top of it too, right? Bring those flowers up a little higher, more filler. So that, you know, as long as it shows some of it, it's gonna look like it's a rose, right? I want you guys to just keep playing around, practicing a little bit more if you want. All right, so let's get some colored chalk out that you can see, or a very, very light pencil that you can erase. Chalk is definitely a lot easier to erase when you're having, you know, you're just playing around. Like, you guys can play around with chalk. If you don't like something, you can erase it really easy. But for you guys to see, definitely I'm going to use a pencil so that you can see some placement. So we'll go with our original, definitely nice big view here, right? So it's definitely a little bit bigger, but we can definitely come out and add a little bit more filler to come out and finish, right? Inspired by this picture here and adapting with a little bit extras from this one. Okay, so we can definitely see nice and close here. So I definitely want to have my rosebud come up a little bit higher. So we're about 2/3 into our painting here. And we just put that little scoop in there where we want to keep that shape. Very similar shape. So that'll maybe guide us a little bit with those back petals. Right? So sometimes I'll do that too, is I'll pencil something in a little bit more in the shape to guide me a little bit more too. Right? So you're kind of giving yourself those little illusions in your head where you want to put those strokes, right? And then, but we need to come a little bit further away from each other than the original because of the shading that we need, right? So we need to fold that one in front, put something in front, right? A little dolphin nose in there is a good one. Put this one all the way around to the side and scoop this dolphin nose around in the front. Pull this one around a little bit in the front. Right, and then this is the one that's scooping out that we were playing with, right? And then folding things in with those dolphin noses. All right, so again, this is another way I play around sometimes, trying to really piece in how I want something to kind of look, just to get it in my head without getting the paint out. We don't have to be artists, guys, but especially trying just to copy something and get the feel of all the different placements of the petals. All right. And then we definitely want to have the acorn, right? So it's going to be a nice size here. So we can do like an acorn shape here. A bit pointy on the top, a bit wider at the bottom here. And then we're going to put our Gerbera. I don't know why I can't say that. Gerbera, whatever, Daisy. And it's going to be nice and big. Right, and then our center, somewhere around there, a little off center. Right, so some of these petals are going to be coming in front, all the way around. Right, and then straightening out. So this is the front of those little areas, and then the back. Okay, so we got to put in a little bit of a hollow there, and then pull those all the way coming in towards the center. Right, flipping them right over, making them really big on this side. See how I was showing you guys before about view, especially when you're looking at a real flower, right? You really see how big these petals are. You know, a little bit bigger. So they can definitely be on top of each other a little bit here. Right, and then we have our mum. And we just put like basic circles. I'm just trying to play with you guys with the drawing here a little bit. Just to kind of give you a little bit more help with placement. Again, this is the view of maybe where that center is that we hardly see. And then we still got to keep, we got red here, so we got to finish our triangle So we're definitely going to put our carnation, squeeze that over here. Right, and then it could be a little bit on the side view, but then again, we're going to have greenery, our slider leaves in there, and some more slider leaves coming off of the side here. If we did put that view of the canvas at the top part of the vase in there, you could put some sort of look in there. Right. Put some greenery in there, make it look like a little bit of a vase view. Optional. We could always change our mind. But then again, more slider leaves coming out the front. Right? And then more of those fillers definitely in the front view. Okay, and then we have at least 3 of these, we want to try and make. So we have our back petals of our lilies. Okay, so we can just do the little triangles of maybe 3 of them. So we have 1 there, 1 there, and 1 there. And then the nice big one here in the front. Oops, a little bit more pointy. Pointy, a little bit more pointy. Okay, so that kind of fills up everything quite nicely. And then definitely, there's room for all those fillers. All right, more slider leaves down here. More filler over here. Just put your branches there for now for like little sticks. Right. And then there was another lily here upside down. Right, so we can try and put one upside down there too. A little bit more to the side, upside down. And you kind of see 4 of those. All right, so it's facing that way. Definitely, we could always play around with more fillers, more leaves. And then there is 2 mums here too, but depending on how we make this mum, like how big we do it, like you can do 2 of them, right? Push this down and try to make a smaller one. There's not a lot there to separate the 2 flowers from one from the other. Right, so hopefully you guys are looking at your picture at the same time. Right, so there is 2 here, but it's such a small amount of shading differences that, it's kind of hard to see. So we definitely, if you're going to put in a 3rd one, just for painting reasons, then definitely we might want to put in some breaking point of some greenery in there, and then maybe move the 2nd mum a little bit smaller over here so that we have a little bit more greenery going on to break up those 2 flowers. Right? And we can try and make a little bit more of a bud style in here. Okay, so we'll make it a little bit smaller. So that's our bud. Or we can put the big one here and the bud on the outside too. But there is a trace of another little bit of these irises over here too, so we could always put little buds of those over here. Okay, more leaves. And definitely red is our big focal point. And then of course our little acorn. Okay, so again, those are strokes that are flipped over to the side and out, and out, and out, and then in and in and in and in. Right, so that's the plan. That's the plan what I see from the inspiration that we have. Can you understand all my scribbles there? All right, so a lot of times it's the best thing to do is start a little bit with some greenery. Especially if you want to have a few of those elements sitting on top of each other, especially like some of these back slider leaves. So let's get that 16 out. And They're pretty nice and bright and green. So they got a lot of that citrus in there. So we're going to make some slider leaves with just a little bit of dark and mostly light. And we're not going to put any white in this citrus because these are going to be like the background ones. So that we want them to definitely look further away. So we can play around with that. Bit of a look there. Alright, so we proposed, like I said, some sliders back here. Okay, so basically they're all on one stem, guys. Right, so try and get a small little chisel here. And you can definitely start putting some, like, a little bit small, skinny, but longer sliders. Okay. So they're going to look smaller in the back because they look further away. So these are just kind of branched off to the back. Okay. The rose is going to sit there. And we probably only see maybe the tops of a few. I don't know, I'm still deciding on how high to go. It's going to go right off the edge of you. Just like the picture does. Alright, so definitely there's going to be some greenery there too. So it might get cut off by the rose too, but we can still put little patches of green in there. Okay, we'll leave that for now. And then I want to put some of these over here as well. So again, a little bit longer slider leaves. So they can crisscross around. So come out. A bit more floating medium in my dark. Some of these can be a little longer. A little bit more. If they're going to be big, then they have to be a little bit more small, slower progression. Some thinner ones. We could always go over them and lighten, brighten them up a little bit more too. Then I'm going to put a little big one here. We can make this one a little bit more wavy to curl around. A little bit more pressure. A little bit more floating medium. Little pop. And then make it a little bit wavy coming out. Just a little bit closer. And I definitely want to put one maybe on this side here. And always layer some more little filler leaves or little smaller one-stroke leaves. Oops, I went backwards. Shadow leaves. Put one of those over here. And these we could also definitely do a little bit more after too. I said I want to change the color a little bit more on them and use an older brush. So we can just put in some proposed stems. And then we'll probably need 3 of those. Let's propose one to be in here, back here. So we can always pounce right on top of that. Okay, so that's giving a triangle over here on the other side. Okay, that's a pretty good start. So I definitely want the Gerber daisy to sit on top of these mums. We definitely want to start with our big white flowers in the back. And then we'll finish with the red ones. Little bit of green, lots of white, and put pressure on your brush down so that you're constantly pushing that green down. So you don't need a lot of it, just enough to start dirtying as you layer. So we do have a little bit of a hollow area here that's fairly green. And right in the very, very middle here, you can just kind of flip-flop a little bit of green there if you want. Just good as a guide and a focal point there. Start to get some of that darker color in there. So we're going to start by the background of the daisy strokes. Okay, so we're slowly working around the clock and really jaggeding them around, guys, so that you got a lot of interest going on. And you can have a little bit of a dirtier white in this back petal. So we're just kind of putting it basically straight at the back. And then as we get around to the sides, you can definitely, these back ones here, we want them to have a little bit more of an interest, maybe a little bit more curls, right? Because we definitely want to have a little bit more of a side view. And so as we're coming around to this halfway point here, you can have some that are curling in different directions. They're starting to flip and change colors, or change directions. And I like putting one straight up, and then I can put, you know, one in the opposite direction too. Okay, making some a little bit smaller. And constantly going to grab fresh paint. And then we want to try and brick layer a little bit. So we want to move down a little bit so then you're always in a kind of a darker area, or maybe where there's a little bit of space, right? So that you can kind of see those whites. Right? We can definitely have spaces in between to give it areas to layer. You don't have to fill it right up. Okay, so we're just trying to move it so you're seeing some of those layers. Curling it. Because we're definitely going to come around and start pulling a little bit more of the centers in. Right, so we have to kind of like flick these side pieces in. Right, this is going to set your center area here a little bit more. And we're going to start flipping around the outside a little bit bigger, right? And these ones you can hardly see, right? So you're just kind of flipping in and down around the bottom of your center. These ones are your biggest ones. And then that other, we're going to put some leaves under here so you're not really going to see this much. Okay, so this is kind of like your closer. Put two little tiny little ones at the very bottom if you want. And I need some fresh white. So hopefully we have the biggest shape that you're going to be making now of your flower kind of filled in. So you're just kind of going doing a half a flower and then two on each side to close it on each side. So now we still want to keep layering here back here. Really tiny ones. So the third layer. And then this is where you're just barely seeing the center of it. So we're going to back right up. Get a little bit of a space there. Right, so we need to back up to make an illusion of where the center is going to go. Okay. And small, big, small, and then we should be going right into those areas where it's going to the side. Okay, bigger, curling it around, layering to make that little cup. Right, you need to adjust some of these side pieces. That's okay. Just you just start it there. Hope you guys can see that. I'm just kind of playing with it now and just kind of fixing it where I think it's looking off. Maybe adding a little bit more thicker, whimsical little strokes in there. And then we're going to layer some leaves in there. So we want to pull a little bit of a smaller one here. And I'm going to actually erase my I'm my eraser was at my workbench there. I'm going to erase how heavy my pencil is here a little bit. Because definitely now, if you don't have your strokes covered, really good, the pencils are going to show underneath it. And you're going to have to do another coat on that area. Me, I went really heavy here, so I definitely don't want to have to worry about those pencil strokes. I'm going to erase that really good before I start. Maybe it'll be a little cleaner for you guys. Okay, so actually what we're going to do here too is to add that little bit of green that we see. Just that little peak of darker green. So let's add a little bit of that thicket into your mix here. Darken that up a little bit. And we can turn our brush around and do a couple little chisels, even to make it look like the base of that flower. Okay, so maybe it's the base of the stem. So it's going over it again. Didn't like my direction. So maybe it has a little bit more of a base on there. Just to kind of break things up a little bit, add some darkness in there a little bit. We can flip our brush around and add some depth in there. Just in the very bottom part here. And then wipe out your brush, come over and pick up some of that bright green and dark green again. I think we need to add maybe another little sliders in here. So if this was a stem, then maybe there was a leaf coming with it, right? So we can put another little slider on top of it to separate things. And we'll layer not too much of a glob. So let's add another couple more fillers over here. So there was some greenery popping out. So we're going to extend this all the way out here so that we know that we're going to be covering some of it. And then you can always put a couple more bright strokes right on top of your leaf again. Make things stand out a little bit more. And cleaning out that dark. And I want to come back into my citrus and white again. And then we're going to put in a little bud. So remember I was curling a couple of them around together. Right, so I'm going to layer some right on top of that leaf. So just making a little tiny bud. Flip around if you want a little bit of different colors, try it. Too dark. So we don't have to layer too much on the bud. Maybe just that little bit of curl in there. Looks good. And now we can go back in and pick that little bit of thicket up again. Just to add a little bit more of a stem in there. And we can always add more to that too. So I try to work my way down a little bit. All right, so we still need to have that citrus in our brush, or we're gonna have to put it in later. Let's change things up a little bit. We're gonna put the berry wine and white in together for these lilies. Okay, so we want just a very little bit of berry wine, guys. Just enough to say that you're touching the back of it. Grab lots of white and just that little tiny bit of berry wine. And we'll start up at the top. And here there's a lot of little ones here that you don't even see the full flower of, right? So we can definitely pull in a few little whimsical little strokes back here. Right, so just like little parts of a flower. Don't want a lot of that berry wine to follow up. Just like a little bit of a line. Nice and soft. Picking up nice fresh white on the edge tip. And then maybe we have another one over here that's just like a small little half flower. So here we're going to have to definitely add a little bit of extra shading where if you can't see it. Just trying to put some of those little smaller ones back here. And then we can do a couple big ones now. And hopefully you're going to layer and touch just the backs of those other flowers. So we're covering that canvas. Right, so we're doing one up in the middle now. Just trying to make these kind of like really whimsical and wiggly, guys. Not so much bumpy. Okay, flip that one right over to the side a little bit more so it looks like it's real and open. And actually I'm going to pull this one from the top and bring that in underneath. Not too much burgundy, guys. Very wide. And just another, maybe a little extra little filler coming out this way. Let things dry, go over it again. A little bit dirty white probably be good too with these. But we are going to go over it a little bit too. These are drying already. Tone down this burgundy. Right. I'm sure all of ours are going to look a little bit different. Okay, so just setting that back 3 petals there. And this one here, you really don't see too much of the center of it. Okay, so I'm going to come up a little bit lower and then add where this one is coming down. Okay. You can add that little bit of a front one. Right. I'm just going to add that little dolphin nose in the front. Curl that in there. And then do the other petal right beside it. Might have to adjust our gradient there a little bit for those. And then flip into that one. This can go right into it. So many ways of doing things, I guess. I want to see it. That's what my goal is right now, is just trying to figure out where is this going to go in, where it's dark. So we maybe have to change things a little bit just so that it's going to show. That's the only reason why I'm pushing that up a little bit more. Right, and then we can always put some filler leaves in there. Right, and then also little bits of green that I want to put in there. This is where it's gonna, oops, I shouldn't have done that. You ever do that? I should have done that. That's where it's gonna break things up with this one. Okay, so this comes down a little bit more on our throat. Longer maybe. Okay, so trust me, this is gonna come together. I have an idea. Okay, so I'm just trying to play around with getting the illusion of a few of these in here. Okay. And then we do want to put one upside down too somewhere. That way. That way. Oops. Draw that a little bit more to a point. Flip this around, point it, come around, bump it around so it looks like it's really flipping over. See how I did that upside down? Let me show you that again this way. Okay, so you start at the top, nice bright white on your tip. Come on over to the top, flipping that over, bump, and then flip it over. A little bit more of a point. These flowers. One over, we'll flip this one over too. A little bit of point, bump, and then curl it right in there. So we have a nice big open one. And then to give it a closer, I'm going to come over and grab the edge of your flower, scoop that in, and finish it in where the other one ends, right at the base. We don't have to go in very deep. We just have to, just a little bit of a throat to put in there. And then this is where our center is going to sit. So give that a nice big center. Shadow should be right in here. Fill that in with some dark if you want. And then we'll have to add some stamens, some longer stamens in that one for sure. And if you see, even on the flower, it's got little bits of green, little bits of pink, little bits of white, right? So it's basically dirty brush. Right, so we have our green, and then we go and pick up, our pink and white is in there, and then we go and decide to pick up some green, some more fresh white, right? And then when you go to push down, you should still hopefully have all three colors showing through, right? So it's just the fact of going back and forth, having green in your brush, and then picking up that pink. And then wiping it off, and then going back and picking up some green. And never really, hopefully you're not getting too muddy. Right, and then you're also pushing really down hard, and then you're still getting traces of that little bit of pink coming through your green. And so playing around with that a little bit more. And because you can do that with your chisels, you can do that with your liner brush. And you just pull out simple ones for now, and then we can always finish those little details later too. Anything that's sitting on top of a flower, like I sometimes will leave to the end and finish at the end. Alright, so we'll keep that going there. Alright, so once this is dry, what we need to add is those little green areas into these flowers. And so that's with that citrus. And so that's why I wasn't too worried about my edges too much right now, because we need to add just that little bit to it. Okay, so hopefully we can find a clean spot on our plate. And this time I want the citrus on the top and a lot of white. And just that little bit of citrus at the top. Okay, so we're gonna float in these little edges, right? So you can come in and just, you can do it all actually with one color is what we could do. But this, the middle one, right in the middle, is more like a really long teardrop. Right, so we're trying to get that green in there. We have too much white in our brush. Told you I'm inspired and I'm trying to figure it out. Alright. Let's just try one color. Hopefully you guys are watching me first before you try it. Alright, so we're just going to add the little bits of green to the illusion of it. Alright, so there's like a, especially this front one. We might have to put a little bit of thicket in that one. A little bit of citrus, a little bit of thicket. Just to deepen it a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of looking good. But now we gotta be careful over here. Green on green. So you just kind of go around the edges, some of them. Sneaking in a bit of that green. Lots more floating medium in there. So right on the edge. You're still seeing a little bit of that white. And a little bit of that purple and a little bit just a smaller edge. Does that kind of look like it, guys? Am I getting there close? It's gonna be that happy balance, just a little bit darker than the citrus, with just a little bit of thicket, just to darken it just a little bit. Make sure this is dry. And you just do like a little bit of a wash on it too, right? You don't even have to put a lot of color on the edges. Okay, so I was a little heavy there. But try a little bit less, and then if you think it needs more, then you can always add more. If it's too heavy, then it might be hard to adjust this without going over the whole stroke. So, floating medium in there. By the time these ones actually were looking pretty dead too by the time I just got them from the florist and they were already looking a little bit dead. So there is like a vein in the middle of them, right? You can do a little bit of the center of it. But like there's weird areas in them. You can do it with maybe a detailer liner or something. But I do kind of like the way that it's softening the edges. Adding just that little tint of the greens in with the purples. We'll make our own. Yeah, I think I like that way better. Kind of stands out better for our purposes. Right? Floating medium. So it's just like a little bit of a wash that I'm doing on the edge. Instead of white, we're doing green. That little bit of tropical feel. And then we'll go over here. There we go. That'll look a little bit better. Just that little hint of sap, or stick it, guys, with your citrus. I need to bring this one out. Have to stay with the original edge. Alright guys, we can always go over this again a little bit later at the end and see how we like it. Alright, add some stamens in there. Messed around with those enough. What do you think of the berry wine and the green and white? Yeah? Am I close? You guys, especially you guys that are the flower ladies there. A couple of them more than me. I can't even remember the names of them sometimes. But definitely, if we need just that little hint of more shading at the end, guys, okay? Don't forget this part. If you need it, just come in with a little bit of color at the end and just pop up some of that shading on all of those. If I don't get the chance to do all of this with you in the class here tonight, just know that these are some of the finishing touches that I like to do with some floating medium and just that little bit of that color. And then you can always tweak, you know, coming in and adding that little more separation and a little bit more depth where you need it. Okay, so maybe right back here a little bit more. Just float that little bit more separation in there, right? I need that a little bit more green to that one, maybe. This one I forgot. And then we want to put some stamens in there. That'll hide lots of things too. So just playing with that combination where you can still see the pink and you still see the green. Like hopefully they're not going to get too muddy. And you can see how I just took a little bit of that wash, and you can. A lot of these flowers have like stripes in them, like a little bit of vein look, right? So if you can see by the real pictures, right, how much you want to play and detail this. You know, you can definitely tweak it a little bit more when it dries. I like pushing it, but let's leave that alone for now. Okay, and then again, you can always put a few more over here, or we can just put more leaves over here. But I definitely want these to be a little bit more white looking. Right. Always trying to fix things. And it's a little bit washy. Let's see how that goes. Have to step away, take a picture. Stand 3 feet back and squint. Okay, so we're not doing too bad here, right? I definitely want this to dry a little bit more. We'll see how we can squeeze our rosebud in there. I don't know how big we're going to make it, but definitely we'll try and keep it a good size. You know, now we're starting to feel where it's crunching in, right? And then I think we better put that in there. Continue working our way down. So I went and put my brushes dry in there now. Okay, so we're going to go and pick up that bright red and a little bit of magenta. And definitely make the back petals a little bit darker, right? We don't have to start adding the yellow yet. But we definitely need that depth in there. We need the gradient to be up high, and then the bright red as your edge. Okay, so I'm trying to make this a little bit smaller than our drawing. Alright, so we're doing that back petal. And then we're curling the other petal all the way to the side. Remember, we had to bring that down a little bit more around. Right? When we were practicing, we figured out that we needed to bring that down a little bit more. So we're starting to build that little bit of a cup, right? Very similar to the teacup. Right? But then we have that little bit more of a bell down here. Right? So we can even put that in there now if you want, right? That's that bottom, remember that bottom petal there? Figure out how low do we want it to go. Propose that to be there. Always adjust things. Right, and a lot of times, if you know me, guys, I like to cover things in, let things dry, and then come back to it too. Right, so we can always just propose this to be the bud area, and come back and maybe even add a little bit more of a base coat. Let's see with these Gerber daisies there. Let's add a little bit of that green in there and that burgundy in there. And just flip-flop a little bit of that center in here. Alright, so we can let that dry while we're working around that way. And again, another way of doing this one too is base coating the general shape. Right, getting the berry wine all in there. Right, how big do we want to make this flower? Right, so we're just going to get that berry wine in there by itself, and a little bit of dirty berry wine with a little bit of thicket in there maybe. So I'm just kind of going wiggly around here. And then we can always add some more highlights. And get that nice and dark. A bit more sap, thicket. And then those bright reds are going to sit right on top of there really nicely. Okay, so let's go back to our rose. And get some fresh cherry wine. The pink, a little bit of red, cherry kind of red. See my coverages. And put this one upside down. Now we gotta start adding just a pea of yellow. And we're gonna put another petal in the back. Alright, so I'm making it yellow, but then I go over it and calm it down. Just smooth strokes, guys. Try not to get my floating medium dirty. Got some white into my floating medium, so it's making my reds pink. A little bit lower. And then on there. Lower to make that small little scoop into the center. Small little U there. And a little bit smaller on the inside. I'm going to bring this down so there's lots of room for our gradient to show. Put a little more yellow than I want to, but it's kind of orangey yellow. And so I want to try and scoop in a little bit of another closer in there. And pull in another little dolphin nose over here. Too yellow. Needs to be a little bit though, eh? I'm gonna pull down on this back petal over here. And just gently add to it, bring it around in the front. When you pull it around and then just leave it like this, then you can always come back and grab it again and finish it, right? That's what I've noticed about, roses is, having to curl those back strokes around the side so that you're able to grab them again and finish them in just with a little bit of a pressure. And you've got that little bit of a closer in front, right? So you're kind of curling everything around all the time. And then we can grab a little bit of this one. Now this one's a little bit darker in here, so we definitely have to bring that red back in here. Pull that maybe a little bit out. If you need to have it looking a little bit more straight. Right. And then maybe we'll pull this one. Maybe we'll erase that one. I want to keep that skinniness in there. When we did the boot camp too there, I totally erased the whole tulip. The girls were laughing at me. I don't like it. It's gone. I'm liking the way that's kind of like scooped out and back in again. All right, so let's put that finishing stroke in there. Okay, so we're gonna grab the edge of this one, curl that down, and then flip that in. Okay, so very similar to what we were doing over here. Okay, so if we need to fix our dolphin nose that curls up underneath it, let's maybe fix that a little bit. Very challenging to get the red rose for sure. Just try to scoop that under. And this is where I think we should just say, oh, we need a leaf. Let's get some green in there. Or even some of that filler. We haven't put too much of that filler in there yet, so let's put a couple more branches in there. Alright, so we're going to pull one of those filler branches in there. So this one's going to come over here, and one's going to come over there. Maybe. And we're going to definitely add some more of that in here. Okay, and that's going to help give us some layering a little bit to save the rose. And I even propose to have another slider leaf over here. And once you guys figure out something like this, definitely, you do it again the second time and it's going to be so much better, right? Because I'm talking about you trying to tackle something that you saw a picture of, right? So your first trial run is really figuring things out, right? And then you learn a lot in the process. And you're like, oh, I like that. I don't like that. I like the way that turned out. But I don't like the way that turned out, right? So you learn a lot, right? Oh, maybe I do need another leaf that way. And you make it your own after, right? Nobody's going to see the original picture that you were inspired by unless you show it to people, right? So you're inspired by the picture, and then you make your creation, and then after that, if you want to put baby's breath in here, you can add another little filler flower in there, or whatever you want. To kind of fill in spaces, definitely a little smaller one-stroke leaves, maybe a little different color, just to kind of break things up and pretend you're the florist. Alright, so I ended up getting a little bit of dirtiness over here. Scrubby brush sometimes work on stubborn areas that are a little bit dry, hasn't set yet. We can get some of that lifted. That's good. Alright, guys. Yeah, let's get an old brush out. Hopefully you have one that's really fuzzy and gone yucky. Size 12. Right. Here you have one. And then we're going to pick up some of that yellow and sap. But definitely want to add a lot more white into it this time. To make it a little bit more warmer white. So we're going to make them look just a little bit different color. And we're going to do some of those chisels, make them look like little trees. Move them back. Have some fresh white. And then move back and create each little section at a time. And then if you need to fill in a little bit more, then you can always add more. But I always want to have that little bit of a break and space in between these little ferns. So they look like all little separate pieces. And dealing with dirty. So some of these really came out a little bit wider. That a little bit wider there. Fresh paint always helps. So yeah, mostly I've been just playing around with thicket so far, guys. I haven't pulled out my sap because, like I said, I do like to play with thicket a lot more when I'm mixing it with the reds. So we can pretty much safely say that it's been mostly thicket. And then we're definitely going to put one over here. And this is why I don't even bother going into fixing any of these edges or highlighting anything, because a lot of times you're going to cover things. So at the very end, you can definitely go over and cheat a little bit and add a little bit more coverage in areas. So this is like a 12, giving me little punches. You get a little bit bigger punches or longer look if you use a lot bigger brush. Dark in there again. And it's just fuzzy stuff. Still working. Trying too hard to do those little branches, but sometimes they just look like little fillers, like we do a lot of times, just those little quick ones, right? So we don't have to go too crazy. I'm just trying to really copy that style. Right, I'm gonna always put in just a few casual ones here and there. And we need some darker ones here and there. Break it up. So we can always add those in. you know, in little areas, right after. Okay, so then we're going to move down into our Gerbera daisy.
So far, I'm keeping up.
So far you're keeping up?
Yeah, I'm just doing it on paper though.
Yeah, this is just like a practice run, right? Like I said, we're just fooling around. And hopefully coming up with something half decent.
So far, it's nice.
Yeah. I'm just stealing a little bit of dark green and fixing the edge here a little bit. Just so, you know, I can show you guys like little details like this. You know, you can always go in and detail whatever you can see. But we're probably going to layer some flowers over that. But, you know, you can definitely go in and add just one color with floating medium. And hopefully you guys know how to do that by now.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's pick up some red and burgundy, a hot pinky red. Right. And we do want quite a bit of it. The gradient is going to be a lot, about half and half, because daisies are bad for that, daisy strokes, because you're always squishing things together, right? So you definitely want to go over and tip with that little bright red. Okay, and we want the 16. That was my 12 that I was using. That's doesn't have a good chisel. Alright, so let's add some more fresh apple red. Make sure your brush is really good and squeegeed out there from cleaning it in your water. All that water's gone. Got enough pink there to just make things a little bit hotter. Alright, so now we're going to get a nice bigger daisy stroke. So we're going to pull those big ones right in from the back. Okay, so they can be a little bit darker for back here. Okay, so if you want to do a little bit more like straight up and down as your 12 o'clock. Right, then your 3 o'clock. Squish that over to the little side a little bit so you get some nice big fat daisy strokes there. Okay, then we're going to go from each side. Now your 3 o'clock into your center. And then your 6 o'clock. And by the direction this is going, your 6 o'clock has to start from the bottom and curl in towards the front. Okay, you can even see it on a real flower, which way that curl is important to get the view going. Okay, so that's your set. Then we can definitely come in and add more different ones. And I'm trying to get more of a pointy look on the top. And definitely have a little bit of space in between back here. Right? A little bit more curl into that one. And I can fill in that whole top area. Leaving a little bit of space. Then I'm slowly, oops, yeah, good thing I caught that one. Picked up green. So now we're going to start curling towards the center. Curling. If you want to put one big one in here in the middle, we can definitely start curling some shorter ones in with it. Now we're going to make these a little bit shorter, but we're going to definitely still concentrate on that punch. So we want nice big petals, but shorter. Bringing that in a little bit smaller and shorter. Right into that base. And then this one's curling around this way. Make that one a little bit bigger. And I'm going to curl just a little bit still in that direction. Okay, so that's our outer skirt. Then we definitely want to come in and start adding just that little bit of yellow now, guys. And I was concentrating on a lot of burgundy there with a little bit of red. Now I want to change things around. So you're basically going to be all cherry red, you know, if you really want to get a nice punch. And then add a little bit of that brighter yellow, which is kind of gone dirty on me. That's okay. It's kind of orangey and I like it. Right? It's working for me for this particular look. Right, so we don't mind this dirty yellow over here. Okay, so I'm just trying to make things just a little bit brighter for the second skirt. Right, and we can just follow that same kind of look a little bit. Right, but sometimes you want to kind of go across it. You don't want to always listen to the petals, right? Make some of these a little bit straighter where you see the other curls. Curl a couple around them. You know, try to make them really whimsical. A little bit skinnier too on some of them. And the second layer, you're coming in a little bit smaller. Get some of that yellow in there now, and then, you know, sometimes we have to maybe go darker again too. Layering a little bit more. Pulling that in a little bit more. Bright red, so it's sitting right on that burgundy area. A little bit more of a point. There's at least a good 2 layers here. We could possibly put a couple more, because this is going to be curling up around this way, right? So you're definitely going to see more on this side. I think I'm liking that kind of look right there. Okay, so we're definitely going to have to downsize to get these little smaller ones in there. Right? If feeling really goopy on your brush, we got to get rid of most of that paint. Okay, so the chisel and pressure, you still want to use the same size brush, but you definitely don't want to be pushing so hard on them now. Right, so that's also going to make them look a little bit different, but still give you some length. I need some fresh yellow. Getting too thick on me. Usually our problem, we're fighting with paint that should be replaced. And get rid of that blob of thick yellow. And come in and brighten this up again. Because I gotta watch these piles or gradient piles, right? Move back now so I'm not in that big blob. And try and pick up your paint nice. Okay, so now we want just like little sticky kind of daisy strokes. Right, just that little bit of a separation. Getting a little bit dark. You can add just that little bit of white in there, just so that when you add that yellow again, it might be a little bit brighter for you. Okay, so we're doing mostly just the outside. And on the top part. And then to the side here. Layer a little bit more. And then just as we're starting to come around the side of the flower, right here, we're coming in similar to what we did earlier, to come up underneath it, to make like a little cup. And then now we can start curling some of these other front ones inside. Okay, so I'm definitely got white in there this time now, but I'm definitely going to go over these a little bit to make sure there's some yellow in there. Okay, so these ones could be a little darker, they're further away. And then you're going to come in and add another little layer behind it. So as long as it doesn't look like it's pink, just little chisels, that's all you need to do. Add a little unders, a little bit smaller too with it. Here and there, a little bit bigger. Layer a couple smaller ones. Add those interesting little tiny ones there. Trying to find where you finish. Tiny little ticks to finish your bowl a little bit. Over it, let's start at the bottom. See how your back ones look. I'm gonna just highlight just the odd one. A little bit more. I don't like that one. They should be definitely darker back there. Okay, so then in the very center, if you see that there's these tiny little tiny ones there you can hardly see. And you can just use the corner of your brush just to kind of freckle a little bit of a C-curve center in there. Put just a little tiny bit of yellow in there. You can just see that little tiny bit. You don't see it in the back part. Just like a little scruffy. Grab a little bit of burgundy if you need to merge it to wet on wet, give it that little bit of so just a little side part of the center. And that's our Gerber Gerber daisy. We're definitely gotta add some more little fillers here and there. Right. My claw stays, Dorothy, on the red Gerber daisy.
Yep. Yeah, they have big centers and like fat centers, and then they have a whole bunch of tiny little tight petals for a couple circles, and then they have some messy ones.
See, even in the picture, even in the picture, there's even some that are curling right over on the center.
Yeah.
Then I would definitely just maybe use the liner there.
Mm-hmm.
Try to get those two colors on your brush at the same time.
Yeah, and there's like so many different kinds of Gerber daisies. I found out having to do some last year for somebody. Yeah, there's all kinds of them.
So yeah, if you want to add just a couple more little really tiny ones in there, then you know you could always maybe add a little bit more white to them, just to kind of pop in a few more. Because they were actually curling in from the center here, like they were coming this way and then out. But I don't want to add too much in there. So yeah, you can definitely go crazy with details. Oops! Getting excited again. Alright, that doesn't matter. We're going to put brown on there anyways. Just leave those ones like that. I had to play around, didn't I? Okay. Dab, dab, dab. Try to give that illusion of a center. A little bit more of that burgundy in there behind it if you want. Now I'm going to fix these ones in front of it. Ab lib a little bit. When it messes up, you have to kind of improvise. So I'm just kind of adding to my little daisy strokes here. Right, to clean things up a little bit. More dark back here. And then I should let this dry, and if I really feel like I want to fix that a little bit more, then I can always add a bit more shading. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the carnation. And still same color combinations. Add a little bit more green in there if you want to darken it a bit more. Okay, so we're going to start off around the back of it and just add these little soft dolphin noses to start the outside skirts. Okay, so you're going to come around and you can brick layer a little bit. Okay, make that back layer a little bit more darker. Go around on both sides. And as we get around each layer. Then we're going to slowly get a little bit lighter and lighter. There. We're just kind of swooping around, getting that general shape around the outside. Then inside we can get a little bit more fussy with our dolphin noses. And you don't have to touch yourselves. Like the last stroke does not need to have any area to touch each other. And in fact, the more space you give this, the better it looks. I'm already dirtying my yellow. So I want to curl in a little bit of a dolphin nose up at the top. Soften it a little bit. And you're just going to come in a little bit smaller, a little bit smaller, a little bit smaller. Big C curve there. And doing some real loose rocking and rolling. Trying to get it a little smaller, a little smaller. And this can look a little bit more just loose and rocky and just filling out that center a little bit randomly. Just watch your starts, they're nice and soft. Just try to do something a little bit more easier. Rocking again. And behind it. Just trying to make it really curly and weird. A little bit different than our other ones that we did. I'm getting lost with my carnation. It's turning into half of a peony. Alright, so I'm going to put some leaves over there too. I'm trying to not take this one too seriously, right? Always improvise. If you don't like it, get a little bit bigger. So you can add a little bit more in there. Refreshing your brush. I'm just trying to make it really curly and weird, guys. Hopefully it's making sense over there. And then this is definitely getting a little bit too muddy now. I'm gonna wait and add some more later. Okay, so we pretty much got our red flowers done. And even in here too, if you wanted to add just that little bit more shading, guys, just add that little bit of thicket and some floating medium. Right? And you feel like you want to add just a little bit of depth in here just to separate where your centers are kind of coming towards. Always tweak things. Right? Just put a little bit more darker color in there. And I give little washes over things sometimes. Right? Any of your strokes that are not strong enough. That little bit of floating medium in the dark color. Or the other way around with your light color. And maybe you want to add a little bit of white to it to make it stand out more. Right? So don't be afraid to come in and tweak things. Right? Add shading where you need it. Add a little bit of white where you need it, if you want to just brighten things up a little bit. Over and add some little bits of separation. A little bit better coverage. Alright, we'll see how we layer the stuff on there. Sometimes it's easy to start it by putting a little bit of a base coat in there. So let's get a little bit of burnt umber. Right, so don't have to make it as big as we proposed. Right, so we can change our mind. But we definitely wanted it to come up a little bit skinny up at the top, and then a little bit more belly shape at the bottom. And so you can get that depth in there. And we're definitely going to come down in a smaller size brush to get those strokes in there, probably like an 8. And so we have definitely more room for lots of fillers in there. Or a 10. I'm going to make it everything so pretty big, so I guess a 10 would be really good. Okay, and then depending on your view too, like this one we're seeing more of the top view. This one you're seeing a little bit more of the side view. This one you're actually seeing a lot of the bottom of it. You see how it's just those little triangles at the very, very bottom? All right, so that's all going to make a big difference in how we put these on. Okay, so we didn't need a lot of dark. We just needed that little bit to put a base coat on. And then now we're going to need a little bit of that coffee latte and white. Okay. A little gradient pile over here. And sometimes you can even do a lot of flip-flopping too. You want that real streaky kind of look when you're making acorns. Okay, add just a little bit of brown in there if you want to darken things just a little bit. And so a lot of the top first few little strokes are just like little ticks. Right? Just gonna do like your typical triangle we do for a lot of our fillers. Okay. And then you're going to come down and start branching them out. Up at the top. Okay. And then you want to be able to start changing your brush from straight up and down to a little bit more on an angle and in. So we're going to slowly make these a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. So you definitely can, doesn't matter which way you flip your brush, but it's a little bit flat on the top and coming in. And then we can do both sides. So we could fill in, if you want, all around the outside of right, so you're doing all the right side, about halfway down. Right, and then we can go over into the middle here. So you're still going to be a little bit at an angle, but we're slowly working ourselves a little bit wider so that it looks a little bit bigger. Right, coming down, brick layering. Flip and flop. So you want to have these little breaks where you're got space in there. Right, so you don't want to be filling up that whole area. Right. Then you're going to come in a little bit higher. Right. And then as they come to the bottom again, you're starting to go more sideways. Instead of up and down, you're coming in a little bit more on the sideways scoop. Really changing it from down to up. Okay. So then you can start on your outside and always work your way in. Brick layering. And try not to go too close on top of each other. Alright, so it's like a simple kind of acorn. And then you can always go and tip it with white if you really want to add a little bit more. Right, you're just tipping a little bit more on the top. But yeah, keep the two colors in there and slowly work your way down and leaving yourself some of that brown. So it's just a very push and pull in. So this side you're pushing in and pulling in. Push and pull in. Slowly getting a little bit wider. And then you're pushing up. Eventually you're going up into the other direction as you're working down the acorn. And so you're pushing down and sliding that in. Smaller ones. Guys, try to keep it all on one page for you. Alright, so that's a quick and easy acorn. And then definitely we need to add some of these fillers in here.
Mandy?
Yeah.
Pine cone.
What?
Pine cone.
Your pine cone?
Yeah.
What about
pine
it?
Cone.
What about it?
That's pine cone. You were saying acorns.
Oh, acorns. I'm sorry. I keep getting those mixed up. I might have to stop these.
Squirrel. The squirrel.
The acorns. Yeah, the squirrel. Sorry. Thank you. I need you here to correct me. Pine cone. I don't like those pine cones. I want to call them acorns. All right, so yeah, I was playing around with the stroke study from Donna there. I was trying to copy that one there a little bit. All right, so we're definitely need to add some of these stamens in here. And maybe a couple that poke out of here. Right. And we can use maybe the dark green to put some or stems in there for the one that we can see. All right, I gotta look back at this one over here again. That's where I gotta keep my focus on. And actually, it's a little bit more brown. Brown, brown, brown. It stands out a little bit more. Change your dots here and there. Or maybe just, that's all you see is the dots. You don't even need to put too many full stamens, right? You just, sometimes that's all you need is the illusion of back there. And then we definitely have a lot of room here for filler flowers. More of these little areas here, or just one stroke leaves, or more shadow style leaves. There's a lot of light going on. We can just put a little bit more of an inky green with the 10. And definitely add, these little fillers will really make it pop, right? And then erasing all your pencil. And so we're just going to fill that in and give it some little fillers here and there. Push. Clean that up a little bit. Wherever you don't like it. Right, so maybe you have a little bit more different kinds of greens. Oh, we forgot to fill out this one. Well, maybe we have different greens. Like I said, this is just inspiration, guys. Right? And make it your own after that. A little bit more coverage. Some bigger ones, some little ones. We can definitely change that up. We have to maybe finish this by adding a little bit more of a stem in there. And this is going back underneath it. Yeah, I think that's all it needed. Got some depth in there. Just kind of just have fun with it. I definitely have to do some erasing on mine before I can take a picture of it. Oh, and Just having fun with it now, guys, just to fill it up. However I can, make it interesting. I come up with my own leaves. Goes out. Try to connect things a little bit so they're not detached. Don't want to mess that one up too much. Could have definitely filled this up a little bit more too. Adding more of these leaves out here. There's a dot there on my canvas, so that makes it mean I have to put a leaf there. It's amazing what one-stroke leaves do for you. Okay? What do you think, Dorothy? Do they save it with the one-stroke leaves?
Yes. I need to do a whole bunch more leaves. To have a bit of a save. I kept up though.
Good. I was trying not to go too fast, but it wasn't too bad. 9 o'clock. That's a good 3 hours. Enough play.
Yeah.
All right, of course we have to sign it. My goal was not to rush you too much, definitely, but hopefully you guys can watch the recording or gonna stop things. But you guys live, I was worried about, but I didn't want it to be another 2-day inspiration. So like our couch and some of our other projects are a little bit longer. Because it takes longer to figure things out. So I was definitely trying to come up with something a little bit easier for you guys.
It's going to be lovely when it's actually on canvas.
Yeah, and then like I said, we can always go in and play with anywhere you need a little bit more highlights. You can always go in with one color. Right? Fix your flowers wherever you need to. I just picked up a little bit of green there. I might have a little green tone in this one now.
It's lovely. Thank you, my dear.
You're quite welcome. I gotta get the eraser out. And you guys have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you soon at the next paint project.
Night, night.
Night, Dorothy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.